everyone, so today I'm going to be creating the taffy to go along with my replica bowl that I made inspired by Coraline. You can use any bowl to create this, however I am going to be using the bowl that I made specifically that represents Spink and Forcible's taffy bowl from Coraline. The first thing that I'm gonna do is actually wrap my taffy bowl to make sure that it's protected while working with the polymer clay, which is then going to create the taffy. And I'm just gonna be using some foam sheeting and also some saran wrap just to make sure that it's completely protected. If you plan on creating the taffy for the bowl you purchased in my shop, I would highly recommend making sure that the bowl is entirely covered to protect the delicate finish. You want to make sure that the bowl that you're using to build the taffy on top of is small enough so that while you're building the taffy, you have room to work with. If it's too big and it fits too snug inside of your bowl, you're going to have issues when you're building out the taffy because the taffy will likely become too big to fit inside of the lip. And the reason that I'm using Sculpey medium blend clay to create the first layer is because it's a lot more durable than the Sculpey 3, which is the colored clay. I also am going to add a layer of foil between the bowl itself and the Sculpey medium blend clay just so that way once it's baked, it's easy to pull away from the bowl. You do want to make sure that it's not overlapping around the lip because if it is, it's going to make it much more difficult to remove the glass bowl once it's baked. Once you have the layer of medium blend clay around the foil, you're then going to bake it in the oven, and while you're doing that, you can then prepare the taffy rolls. And while the first layer of the Sculpey medium blend clay is in the oven, you can begin mixing the colors of the taffy. I'm using a reference from the movie, which I will insert here. And basically I'm just going off of this one still, and you can kind of mix whatever colors you want, but I'm trying to keep it true to the film, so a lot of pastel pinks and also some teals, maybe a little bit of red and a tiny bit of brown. And what I'm gonna do is basically just choose two colors based on the reference photo, flatten them out, and roll them up. And because there's so many different variations of taffy, I'm actually gonna go ahead and cut this in half so that I can use one that will have the lighter pink on the exterior and then the other one which will have the brighter pink on the exterior. Once the taffy rolls are formed, you're then going to refrigerate for approximately 10 to 15 minutes. Refrigerating the taffy prevents the colors from bleeding together when being cut. Once the taffy rolls have been refrigerated, I'm then going to be removing them one at a time and slicing them approximately 1/4 to 1/2 inch thick. I'm then going to form the taffy pieces by rounding out the edges and squishing them down until they're about 1 inch in diameter. For this step, I found it to be easier to form and smooth the taffy pieces using my fingers without gloves. since I have created this taffy quite a few times, about 4 or 5 now, I'm finding new ways to improve the design. And so what I just did is I actually ended up removing the glass and the foil from the bowl before building the taffy on top of it. I went ahead and used some heavier grit sandpaper just to make sure that the edges were smooth. That way, once the taffy is placed on top, you're not going to have to worry about any of the jagged edges ruining the bowl itself. I'm working on pink taffy bowls in addition to the teal, and so I'm gonna go ahead and create another bowl so that I can make taffy for both the pink and the teal at the same time. I usually bake it at a little bit of a lower temperature just so that I have more control over the clay, but I'm gonna probably put it in at about 250 for probably about 25 to 30 minutes. So now that I have all of my taffy pieces squished down and ready to place, I'm going to begin placing the taffy on my already baked medium blend clay base, and I'm also going to be using Sculpey Bacon Bond to adhere the unbaked clay to the already baked clay. So I've decided to kind of cut off some edges to really form the taffy that's next to the 4 points, just to form it together so you won't see any straight edges. The original taffy that I made, I actually, I ended up cutting the edges so it was like a flat line, but I think that this is gonna look a lot better and you'll kind of be able to see the taffy through the bowl itself as well. One of the mistakes that I've made previously when creating the taffy is I have left it soft, the taffy pieces. I've left them unbaked throughout the whole process of me creating the taffy. This time around, I think what I want to do is actually get this back into the oven to get this bottom layer baked. That way it's not going to deform as you're building the rest of the taffy. This may not be the easiest tutorial, but I can promise you that after doing this a few times, I do feel like this is how you're going to get it looking awesome, honestly. Just amazing and just a cool replica. So if you have the patience, I definitely recommend doing it this way. I know it seems like a lot for someone who may not create regularly, but I promise it'll be worth it. Once the first layer of taffy is baked and cooled, I'm then going to quickly sand it using some fine sanding pads before continuing to build the rest of the taffy. I'm gonna go ahead and start building it and just see how it positions on top of the teal bowl that I have wrapped and protected. So now that I'm getting close to finishing the taffy, the way that I'm gonna fit it onto the bowl is actually by holding the taffy lightly and gently upside down. And so I can fit the bowl on top to kind of gauge if it's gonna sit in there correctly or not. I can tell that I need to add more clay here and maybe on this side as well, just because when the taffy sits into the bowl, it's actually gonna be balancing on this second layer, not the first. So now that I've built basically the shape of both the taffies that I'm making for my teal and pink bowl, I'm gonna go ahead and put them in the oven for approximately 30 minutes at about 265 degrees Fahrenheit. So the taffy is officially fully baked and I'm actually really happy with how it looks. It's a huge improvement from the last couple taffies that I made. What I did do off camera is I just lightly went in and sanded some surfaces that had tiny little hairs and dust on it, just because I wanted it to be a little bit of a cleaner look. So if you do make this yourself, you know, feel free to really perfect it if you need to. I'm actually going to be using this Sculpey Gloss Glaze, and all it is just exactly what it says, a glossed glaze that I'm going to be painting over the Palmer clay, and I'm just hoping that this is just going to kind of mask any sanding marks and also just giving it more of a candy-like look. This was the thickest brush that I had to work with. It just doesn't have a handle. But you can use a real regular paintbrush. I wanted something that was wider and flatter to allow me to get more coverage with one stroke. So that's why I'm using this weird Frankenstein paintbrush. After about 3 coats of gloss, my taffy is finally complete. Overall, I'm super happy with the outcome and I think it makes the perfect addition to my collection. If you decide to give my tutorial a try, please make sure to tag me on social media at Creations by Hailey. And as always, thank you so much for following along.